What's up guys, it's Nathan here. So this video is meant to be a step-by-step beginner tutorial for anyone who's looking to buy a home for themselves this year. Now I've made a few videos like this in the past. I felt a new video needed to be made to address the ever-changing real estate market and also focus on people who want to buy a home to live in, which is arguably very challenging given there's so many different factors to consider. The cool thing is I'm making this from two different perspectives. The first perspective is as a mortgage broker, which has been my full-time job, and over those last 10 years, I've helped thousands of first homeowners achieve their dream of home ownership. So it's pretty safe to say over the last decade, I've seen it all. The second perspective is that I've bought personally myself. So I totally understand the emotional aspect of doing that and also what to look out for and to avoid. Now this video is probably going to be a little bit longer than any of my other videos. And the reason for this is I want to be as comprehensive as possible, which means you'll have no other choice but to smash that like button if you haven't already, because it helps the almighty YouTube algorithm. And the more engagement these videos get, the better they do. So if you wouldn't mind smashing that like button, it'd be greatly appreciated, or commenting anything down below. So let's go ahead and start off with talking about how much deposit is required. Jaden, kick things off and tell me, how much deposit do I need as a first homeowner? Do I need a 20% deposit? Can it be done with no deposit at all? What does it all look like?
When I started looking for my home, I was depressed. I thought to buy a $500,000 home, I was going to need my 20% deposit. I was going to need fees for solicitors, all the rest. It was just abysmal. I didn't realize that there were certain government schemes that allowed you to buy with as little as 5%. So today you can buy with as little as 5% deposit. So in other words, if you're buying a home for $500,000, depending on the state, if your stamp duty waived in Queensland, for example, it is waived, you can actually be in the property market with as little as $25,000. There's even ways to do it with less if you've got the help of a guarantor. But for the purpose of the video today, let's look at what's available sort of for everyone, assuming you don't have parents that can help out with that. So if you're an Australian citizen, you're going to be eligible potentially for the home guarantee or the first home loan deposit scheme. You can buy it with as little as 5% deposit. For everyone else, if you're a permanent resident, if you've owned a property before, you generally need about an 8% deposit. So for that same $500,000 purchase, you're going to need about $32,000 in savings, plus money to cover your stamp duty and other fees as well.
Awesome. That's really good to know. So you don't need a 20% deposit. For all those out there, you can work with a 5 to 8% deposit. So something really good to know. Jaden, if you've started off, I had a client recently, Nick, he called me up and he said, I've moved to the country. I don't have a credit history. I've never had a credit card. I've never had a phone bill. Do you need credit history? Is it like America where you need that history to be able to get a loan?
This has to be the single biggest misconception I've dealt with. So in Australia, it's a completely different system to in America. In America, yeah, definitely. They have different home loan rates and interest rates and products and stuff depending on your credit file. So Nathan and I might be the same age, same job, same everything else, but if I miss some payments on my credit file, I'm going to get a way worse interest rate than Nathan. That's in America. In Australia, it's not like that. Now, while our credit files will show up to 2 years history on your credit cards, and if I did miss that repayment, in the last 6 months, the banks will know that. They might just say, nah, Jaden, I'm not going to give you a loan. Fortunately for us, we don't need to have a credit history to apply for a loan. So yeah, I had Hans that actually moved over from Germany. He's a permanent resident here, but had no history of credit cards in Australia. He had a bunch of cards in Germany, over in America, where he did his student loan, et cetera, but here had no history. And when we tried to pull up his credit file, it actually said nothing found. This isn't an issue for banks in Australia. What banks in Australia are looking for when you're doing your home loan is just for negative things. So if you've missed repayments, not going to look good. If you've got defaults, it's not going to help you. But if you don't have any credit history, if you haven't applied for a credit card, it's definitely not an impediment to applying for your home loan.
Definitely great to know. So you don't need to have a credit history for all those out there. And I said the same thing to Nick. You don't need to have a credit history. He's actually going to apply for a credit card just to build that up. And I told him not to, because sometimes actually applying for credit cards can lower your credit score, or if you get knocked back, look bad. So something to keep in mind. Now, obviously, when we're talking about the home loan process, paying off higher interest debts is probably one thing to consider. So Jaden, what does this look like in the home buying process, and why should you look to pay off higher costing debts and even your HECS debt?
I had the craziest story the other day. So I was sitting down with Mitch and Sarah, we were doing their pre-approval application and we're looking through. There were two normal people on normal paying jobs, on 80 grand each, but Mitch had a HECS debt of only $10,000 and a couple of credit cards. He said, I prefer to keep my credit cards. There's about $20,000 limit there. I don't have to close them. It's a bit annoying. I said, well, doing the numbers, if we close your two credit cards of $20,000, it actually increases your borrowing capacity by 5 times. So those $20,000 credit cards, they were reducing his borrowing capacity by $100,000. He was wild. He's like, oh, I don't even use it. Like I only put $10 on there a month. Does it matter? I'm not using, I'm always clearing it. It doesn't matter. The banks are looking at the limit. They're looking at what you can potentially draw on. So even though you might be using $1 and paying it back every month, you can potentially take 20 grand and put it on red at the casino, and that's it. You'll have to pay it off over the next few years. So the banks look at it that way. So that's the first tip. Credit card limits, personal loans make a massive impact. It's disproportionate. It's 5 times what the limit is, potentially is reducing your borrowing capacity. The second one was HEX. So like I said, he only owed a few $1,000s on his HEX, and he said, well, it's no interest. Like, it'll be paid off actually by next financial year. I don't really care about it too much. I said, well, mate, like, this is actually reducing your borrowing capacity by $60,000. Now, the reason being is the bank isn't looking at that few $1,000 HEX limit. They're looking at his salary of 80,000 and then taking off the percentage. I think it was like 5 or 6% of repayments after tax, and it's massively impacting the borrowing capacity. So these little things can impact your borrowing capacity and your home loan application massively. And that's why it's important to sit down with a mortgage broker like Nathan and I to take time to understand what is going to get you best bang for your buck. Should I close the credit card? Should I leave it? Is it fine? Does it even matter? Am I going to get impacted by future borrowing changes, by interest rate impacts? And that's where we can help.
100%. So let's talk about getting a pre-approval and why you should get one if you are looking at getting in the home loan process.
Catch up with John the other day. We met in March this year, so it was only a few months ago, but since that time, there's been over 7 rate rises, and his borrowing capacity at the time was 800,000. It's come back to 550. So it was another one of those situations where, although we were pre-approved earlier in the year, nothing in his situation has changed. He's still working full time. There's no issues there. Pay's actually gone up a little bit, but because of the way that the banks are assessing things, because of the way that they're changing credit policies and more of that assessment rate, his borrowing capacity's come back heaps. And we've had to do some stuff, like I mentioned a bit earlier, with closing off HEX and credit cards to get the borrowing capacity back to where it was. Now, in your situation, everyone's going to be different, but the thing to keep in mind is a bank pre-approval will at least give you confidence, and the bank's looking at your situation saying, yep, as at today, we're confident that you can afford X for the next 3 months. We'll have to reassess it, and we can choose to reassess your application anytime. So if you decide to quit jobs, you change careers, you're looking at something else, they can look at things. They can reassess and change the numbers basically. But the point is, pre-approvals are important in the current market with things changing. If you want to make offers, if you're going to be taken seriously by sellers, the pre-approval will mean you can get in there and say, yep, I'm going to make an offer, 7-day finance. I'm going to potentially waive my finance clause to secure the home that you want today without having to miss out.
And what's the best time to buy? We talk about, waiting for the market to drop. I've got a few home buyers that are a little bit worried at the moment with the market moving. When should you time it? Should you time the market?
Yeah, Nathan, it's been the question of the week. A few people I've spoken to this week are saying, oh, I'm waiting till next year to see what's going to happen. I think if you ask anyone, I remember during the GFC, I think it was 2008, there were just, Wall Street was having the biggest losses of the day, and everyone's like, it's going to be blood on the streets. The market's never going to recover. And lo and behold, within 12 months, it sort of all bounced back. So no one is going to be able to pick the bottom of the market. No one knows. You did a video recently with Jeremy Fisher, and he was talking about, with property, an average downturn will only last 12 to 18 months. We're already 6 or 7 months in Sydney and Melbourne. It's a bit longer, some of that downturn. So we could actually start to see things sort of bottoming out soon and starting to pick up early next year. We're definitely seeing a lot more increased activity with investors out in the prowl because they're seeing, well, vacancy rate is less than 1% in most of the capital cities across Australia. You can't, like, there's tenants lining up. That makes a lot of sense for them. So I think no one can possibly time the market. You ask Warren Buffett, he says, you can't time the market. It's about your time in the market, not timing, sorry. So keep that in mind. I think no one knows. Look at your own situation. If you've got a deposit, if you're feeling comfortable in your work situation, if you need somewhere to live with housing, it's just a need. It's not like people are out there trying to make money necessarily. It's about having somewhere to live. And I think if it makes sense for you, it's the right time to buy.
And why should you get a list of what you want before you start the purchasing process?
Yeah, Nathan, I remember you telling the story before of when you started looking, you were looking from one side of the city to the other, at apartments, at townhouses, at caravan parks, everything. Nothing was not off your list. You had the most wide criteria I've ever seen anyone have. And it's a common story for a lot of first home buyers at the moment. You go out, it's overwhelming. On real estate, it gives you access to millions of properties. Every property in Australia is listed on realestate.com.au or Domain. So you could hypothetically be buying a $30 million home in Toorak in Victoria, or you could be looking at a caravan park site in Western Mackay. It is too much. You need to narrow down that list, because otherwise, like Nathan was when he was a first home buyer, and even like me, you can spend months just getting frustrated, going to open homes, agents saying, yeah, we're inviting offers, definitely make an offer on this. You think it's worth 400,000 and you find out it's worth 800, it's worth double. It sucks. It's not fun. And you spin your wheels and you just get frustrated and get turned off. So The more narrow you can make your criteria, the more you can kind of get that list down. We've got a buyer's brief in our website you can kind of check out and work through what's going to work in your situation, because everyone's situation is different. For Nathan, he might want a tenant's court and a sauna. He might not. He might want someone to park his caravan. These things are all important to narrow down. You could just want a 1-bedroom apartment. You might want something that's pet friendly. All these things are important to sort of filter down and then find the right home for you in your situation.
We've seen a large number of people starting to use buyer's agents. So do you recommend this for a first homeowner out there trying to get in the market?
It is a tricky situation, Nathan. I think with buyer's agents, they are really useful if you're extremely time poor, if you're wanting to sort of find a place quicker, but it's expensive. It on average costs between 10, 15. I had a client the other day paid $25,000 for a buyer's agent. Now, looking back, those clients were 2 doctors. They were extremely busy. They had time for, they didn't have time to go to open homes, talk to agents, shake hands, that sort of stuff. I think the misconception with buyer's agents is they're going to find you these secret handshake deals that don't exist on the market. Now, even a lot of buyer's agents, I saw one's website the other day, they advertise that they only find less than 20% of actual sales off market. So it's not a big proportion of what they do. What I think they do bring to the table is they'll help you be able to make a reasonable offer on a property. So to my point earlier, a lot of people think, oh, this place is probably only worth 400 when actual market value says it's worth 500. So at least they'll get you to that point quicker, get you to the pointy end. They'll sort of help filter through a lot of the junk. So there's a lot of stuff online where the agents might be advertising at a price point that might not be there. They'll also help you work through that buyer's brief, which I mentioned earlier, in the point where you kind of work out, Nathan wants a place to park his caravan. He might want a 1-bedroom flat, that sort of stuff. Working out that stuff is more important. And I think for a lot of first home buyers, you can probably do that yourself because, again, it's your home, it's somewhere you want to live. It's pretty personal. And unless it's investment property, it's kind of difficult to get a buyer's agent and sort of outsource.
How long does the process take?
The home loan process is actually relatively quick. In the process, for a lot of people, they can take years finding a home. Some homeowners take up to 2 years. I think the average is 3 to 6 months actually start the process to finding a home. So you can spend half a year going to open homes, trawling the papers, looking online listings and not finding a home. So that process can take a while. As far as the home loan process, the part that we help out with, it can be all wrapped up in under a month. In Queensland, you could be signing a contract today and you could be moving in 30 days time. It's pretty quick, but say from today, if you come and meet us, say, hey, Nathan, I want a home loan. We can have your home loan approved in under 14 days. Some banks can do it in under a week. It can be pretty quick. Then from there, it takes about a week to sign your loan contract. So you're kind of 2 or 3 weeks in, another week to be prepared. So realistically, from today, you could be in a home in a month's time. As far as when should you start engaging mortgage broker and looking? It's pretty early in the piece. Mortgage brokers like us can help with setting your budget, working out, if you need to close your credit cards, what's happening with your savings. Consider things like the First Home Super Saver Scheme to accelerate your savings. And not just that, sort of help you as you're starting to look. If you're thinking about buying a place in, say, January, for example, in the new year, get things going. I generally recommend having a chat to a mortgage broker like us about a month or 2 in advance to get your pre-approval process going, to calmly go through sort of different options, fixed, variable, offset, redraw, all those important questions that you want to get done right up front. Because in the future, if you turn to an investment property, you can have big tax problems, or you could limit you from being able to pay off your loan quicker.
How do you make an offer on a property if you like it?
This process varies from state to state. So keep this in mind. This is kind of the broad process, but generally speaking, first you want to know your budget. You want to have spoken to us and say, Nathan, you are good to go for a $550,000 purchase. I've included all your stamp duty, your bank deposit, all the other fees in there. So you're not going to get caught out on settlement. So you find the property, contact the real estate agent. Now, I generally advise having a bit of a chat. Again, we've got a checklist on our website for the questions you can ask the real estate agent. Things you want to know are like, why are they selling the property? How quick are they looking at selling? What's their situation? Are they open to offers? Have they had any offers before? What's the sort of price guide? Trying to suss them out, because it always sucks going in sort of blind saying like, oh, well, I think the property's worth 500,000. There's nothing listed online. The agent's like, this guy's an idiot. It's worth 350. So you want to kind of suss them out. We can also help our clients out with the CoreLogic RP data report to sort of just narrow down that value. So anyway, back to you're speaking with the agent. You want to put an offer in writing. So you can do it as simple as an email. Say, hey, Mr. Agent, I'd like to make an offer as follows. So you put the name, Jaden Vecchio, Nathan Vecchio, the amount, 475,000. The initial deposit, you might put like $1,000 and then a balance deposit when the contract's paid. And then you also put any terms and conditions. So I want to offer with 14 days finance, 14 days for building and pest. and then the settlement period. So this varies from state to state. In Queensland, it's 30 days. In Victoria, it can be similar in Perth. In Sydney, it can be up to 6 weeks. So keep that in mind. The agent can kind of help guide you around that. But that's how the process starts. And then from there, any number of things can happen depending on your state. The agent might give you a call and say, oh, Nathan, this is awesome. Can you bump up a little bit? And they'll get you to kind of counter offer yourself. What I'd suggest here is you say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Agent, how about you give that to the sellers, see what they think, and come back to me. Otherwise, yeah, they'll sort of start the process from there. They might put it in a contract, depending on your state. It changes. We've got a bunch of other videos on that, so check out our channel for more info on that, depending on your state.
Now the offer's accepted, Jaden. What type of searches and inspections do you need to do?
So there's 2 tracks with this. If you're buying a standalone home, that's your own place, or if you're buying an apartment or townhouse. So they have different ways of doing it. If you're buying a standalone home, you're going to want to do your own building and pest report. You're going to get the solicitor to do checks about the council to make sure it's all approved. They're going to check for caveats on the properties, all sort of standard stuff. Plus your bank, and as a part of it, your mortgage broker will help you with your bank valuation. So that's a sort of standalone home. With a townhouse or a unit, you're going to want to do similar sort of searches. So you want to make sure there's no concrete cancer and things like that. But you also want to do a strata or a body corporate search to see if there's any pre-existing issues with the building. So one thing that's common, you might have read about mascot towers. If not, definitely check it out. And we've got another video on that on our channel, talking about how the building had pre-existing defects and issues that actually got identified by the strata, the body corporate. And I was in the minutes of meetings, they're saying, hey, we're going to have to raise a bunch of money because this building is kaput. It's got a lot of issues. So it's up to you as a buyer, though, to do those strata and those body corporate searches. It's completely on you. The agent technically doesn't need to tell you, unless they're aware of it, and they could say they're not aware of it. In that case, it was a pretty high profile thing. But anyway, definitely get those searches because you can get caught with it. Because once you own the property, once they give you the keys, it's your place and it's your problem to inherit.
What are the costs involved with purchasing your first home?
Yeah, the standard stuff which a mortgage broker will take you through is your deposit. So it's that 5 or 8% that I talked about earlier. It's your stamp duty, which, like I said, depends on the state. With some of the states like Queensland, New South Wales, it's waived up to a certain point. So check that out. We've got to calculate our website. There's transfer duty, which is another government fee. That's generally included in your stamp duty, but that can be 2 or 3% of the purchase price, depending on the purchase price. Your solicitor fees, it's about $2,000. Building and pest, about $500. Moving might be $1,000. Another $500 in searches. So it can be a few $1,000s. Like I said, we've got a calculator on our website that will help you with working that out, or speak to a good mortgage broker that will step you through these costs to make sure you don't get to settlement with sort of unexpected expenses.